I had just turned 32 when my mother, who had practically disowned me years ago, suddenly wanted back into my life. The same woman who sat silently when my stepfather declared I was not real family and therefore deserved nothing in their will. The same parents who lavished everything on my half-siblings while I scraped by. But that was before my biological father. A man who had been absent most of my life passed away and left me $3 million. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Also, if family betrayal stories resonate with you, hit that subscribe button because truth is often more painful than fiction. My childhood changed forever when I was 7. That was when my mother Sandra married Richard, a successful businessman with a mansion on the outskirts of town. I remember being excited about finally having a father figure and a new, bigger home. I had visions of playing catch in the backyard and being taught how to fix things around the house like my friends with their dads. At first things seemed promising. Richard was polite if a bit distant. He bought me a new bike for Christmas that first year, though he seemed annoyed when I hugged him in gratitude. I still tried my best to make him like me, calling him sir, and always being on my best behavior around him. Everything shifted when my half-brother Thomas was born just 13 months after the wedding, followed by my half-sister Alicia 2 years later. I noticed the change immediately in how Richard behaved. With them, he was affectionate, playful, and present. He would cancel business trips to attend their doctor appointments, but never once came to any of my school events. My mother changed too. She became increasingly preoccupied with her new children and less interested in my life. When I brought home straight, as she would nod absently, when Thomas learned to spell his name, there were cupcakes and celebrations. By the time I was 13, the pattern was unmistakable. Richard bought Thomas a top-of-the-line computer for his 6th birthday. I had been asking for a basic one for school projects for 2 years, always told it was too expensive. When I pointed out the inconsistency, my mother pulled me aside. She whispered harshly, "You should be grateful for everything Richard provides. This house, your clothes, the food you eat. Do not be an ungrateful child." I retreated further into myself, focusing on schoolwork and joining as many after-school activities as possible to avoid being home. I made the basketball team in 9th grade, something that filled me with pride. My first home game, I scanned the bleachers, constantly hoping to see my mother. She never showed. Later, I learned Alicia had a dance recital the same evening, and of course the whole family attended that. The worst was my 16th birthday. For months, I had dropped hints about wanting my license and maybe help getting a used car like many of my friends were getting. Nothing fancy, just something to get around. My birthday fell on a Tuesday that year. I came down to breakfast hoping, at least for acknowledgement. Richard was reading his newspaper. Thomas and Alicia were eating cereal. My mother was making lunch for the younger kids. "Good morning," I said cheerfully. "Anyone know what day it is?" Richard glanced up briefly. "Tuesday. Big meeting today. Sandra, I will be home late." No one else said anything. I went to school with a lump in my throat. That evening I came home to an empty house and a note saying they had taken the kids to a movie. There was money to order pizza. 2 weeks later, my mother apologetically handed me a $20 bill. "Sorry about missing your birthday, honey. Things have been so busy with Alicia having trouble in math class." 6 months later, Alicia turned 13. Richard rented out an entire restaurant, hired a popular local band, and bought her a diamond necklace. I watched my mother fuss over every detail of the party, making sure everything was perfect for her princess. That summer, I got my first job at the local grocery store, saving every penny. When senior year college applications came around, I sat down with my mother and stepfather to discuss options. Richard barely looked up from his phone. "Community college seems right for your grades." "I have a 3.8 GPA, I argued. "I am in the top 10% of my class." He waved his hand dismissively. "Those fancy universities are a waste anyway. You can get a perfectly good education locally." Later, I learned he had already hired a college consultant for Thomas, who was struggling to maintain a C average, but would be applying to Ivy League schools in a few years. During my freshman year at community college, I worked 30 hours a week at 2 different jobs while maintaining a full course load. I came home one weekend to find my mother and Richard preparing for a 3-week European vacation with the kids. "You will be okay watching the house, right?" My mother asked, not really a question. I just nodded, too tired to argue. That night I overheard Richard talking to my mother in the kitchen. I do not understand why he still hangs around so much. He is an adult now. Should not he be independent? My mother sighed. He is still my son Richard. Technically, yes. But we have our real family to think about. College for Thomas and Alicia will be expensive. I silently backed away, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. Despite everything, I graduated with honors and found an entry-level marketing position in a city 2 hours away. The distance helped, and I began building a life for myself. I shared an apartment with 2 roommates, made new friends, and slowly worked my way up in the company. I met Amy at a work conference when I was 25. Smart, funny, and kind, she saw something in me I had forgotten existed. With her, I felt valued and important. After dating for a year, she came with me to a family Thanksgiving. It was the first time she would meet my family, and I was nervous. Richard barely acknowledged her. My mother made small talk, but kept getting pulled away by Thomas and Alicia with their endless demands. After dinner, as Amy and I were helping clean up, we overheard Richard talking to his brother in the living room. The business is set up to go to Thomas eventually. He has the Davis name after all. Joaquin is not really family in that sense. Amy found me in the guest room, angrily throwing our clothes into our suitcase. "How can you let them treat you like that?" she demanded. "I have had 20 years of practice," I replied bitterly. She took my hands in hers. "You deserve better. We are leaving right now," and we did, driving 2 hours back to our city in tense silence. Amy helped me see what I had been denying for years. My mother had chosen her new family over me time and again. I was 27 when I discovered I had been officially cut out of any inheritance. It happened during a rare visit home for Christmas. I had excused myself to use the bathroom and was walking back when I heard my name mentioned in Richard's study. The door was slightly ajar. The estate lawyer was there with Richard and my mother. "Everything is in order," he was saying. "Your estate will be divided equally between Thomas and Alicia upon your passing." "And you are sure Joaquin cannot contest this?" my mother asked, her voice tight. The lawyer cleared his throat. "As he is your biological son, it would be customary to at least acknowledge him in the will, even with a token amount." Richard scoffed. "That is unnecessary. He is not a Davis. I have provided for him his entire childhood, paid for his education." I nearly laughed out loud at that blatant lie. I was still paying off student loans. My mother said nothing for a long moment. Then, so quietly, I almost missed it. "If you think that is best, Richard." I stumbled back, feeling like I had been punched. It was one thing to suspect you were less loved, another to hear it confirmed so coldly. I composed myself and rejoined the family, gathering plastering on a fake smile while feeling hollow inside. Later that night, I confronted my mother in the kitchen. "I heard your conversation with the lawyer," I said bluntly. "Am I really that meaningless to you?" Her face paled. "You misunderstood. Richard built everything in this family. It is his decision how to distribute his assets. And what about your assets? What about your decision? What about standing up for your son?" I pressed, my voice breaking. She looked away. "It is complicated, Joaquin. The business, the house, everything is entangled. No, it is actually very simple. You chose him and your new kids over me. You have been choosing them for 20 years. "That is not fair," she protested weakly. "Nothing about any of this has been fair," I replied and walked away. After that visit, I reduced contact to bare minimum. A phone call on her birthday, a card at Christmas. Each conversation left me feeling drained and worthless. Meanwhile, I poured myself into building a life that was entirely my own. I earned a promotion at work, then another. Amy and I moved in together, then got engaged. We married when I was 29 in a small ceremony, surrounded by friends who had become my chosen family. My mother attended the wedding alone. Richard was too busy with a golf tournament. Thomas and Alicia did not bother to RSVP. My mother sat stiffly through the ceremony and left before the cake was cut, claiming a headache. Amy and I built a good life together. We had game nights with friends, took weekend trips exploring new cities, and supported each other through career challenges. For the first time, I felt what unconditional love was supposed to feel like. I started therapy to process my childhood, slowly untangling the knots of unworthiness that had been tied inside me. When I was 30, my appendix ruptured. I was rushed into emergency surgery and spent 5 days in the hospital. Amy called my mother immediately after I went into surgery. She did not come. Not that day. Not the next. She lived 30 minutes away but sent a text message. "So sorry to hear about your surgery. Hope you feel better soon. Thomas has a soccer tournament this weekend, so we cannot get away." Amy was furious. "Your own mother will not visit you in the hospital after emergency surgery because of a child's soccer game. That is beyond ridiculous, Joaquin. It is cruel." I stared at the ceiling, letting the truth wash over me. She was right. No matter what I did, no matter how much I achieved, I would always be an afterthought to my mother. The pain of that realization was almost worse than my surgical recovery. After that, I stopped initiating contact completely. If she wanted a relationship, the ball was in her court. Months passed with only occasional text messages from her, usually asking why I had not called her lately. Then, on my 31st birthday, I received an email that changed everything. The subject line was simple. "From your father, James Martinez. My biological father had left when I was 6, disappearing from my life completely. I had vague memories of him, a deep laugh, strong arms that would toss me into the air, the smell of his cologne. But he had never reached out, never paid child support, never acknowledged birthdays or graduations or any milestone." The email was brief. "Joaquin, I know. I have no right to contact you after all this time. I understand if you delete this without reading further, but I am back in town and would very much like to meet with you if you are willing. There are things I need to say to you in person. My number is below if you decide to reach out. James." I stared at the message for a long time, emotions swirling. Anger, curiosity, hurt suspicion. I showed it to Amy that evening. "Are you going to call him?" she asked gently. "I do not know." "Why now? After 25 years of silence, the only way to find out is to meet him," she pointed out. "You can always walk away if it feels wrong." A week later, I was sitting in a coffee shop, anxiously checking my watch every 30 seconds. I had agreed to a 20-minute meeting, no more. When he walked in, I recognized him immediately. I had his eyes, his jawline. He had aged hair now, mostly gray lines around his eyes, moving a bit slower than I remembered. "Joaquin," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for coming." We talked stiffly at first, the awkwardness of strangers who share blood. Then he told me why he had reached out. "I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer," he said simply. "The doctors give me 6 months, maybe less." I sat back, unsure how to respond. "I am sorry to hear that I finally managed." "I do not want your pity," he continued. But I could not die without at least trying to explain, to apologize, to maybe get to know the man my son has become. Over the next hour, forgetting my 20-minute limit, I heard his story. How he had struggled with alcoholism when I was young. How my mother had given him an ultimatum: get sober or get out. How he chose the bottle, the greatest regret of his life. How he had gotten sober 5 years later, but by then my mother had remarried and threatened a restraining order if he tried to contact me. "I do not blame your mother," he added quickly. "She was protecting you from disappointment. I was not reliable then. He had kept tabs on me from a distance. He knew what city I lived in, what company I worked for. He had even driven by my wedding venue, sitting in his car in the parking lot, too ashamed to come in." "Why now?" I asked. "Selfishly, because I am running out of time," he admitted. "Unselfishly, because I thought you deserved to know that not a day went by that I did not think of you and regret my choices." I did not forgive him that day, but I did agree to meet again. One coffee led to another, then a dinner, then weekly visits, as his health deteriorated. I learned he had built a successful construction business after getting sober, that he had never remarried or had other children. I was his only family. As his illness progressed, I found myself driving him to doctor appointments, helping organize his medications, eventually sitting with him through chemotherapy sessions that we both knew were only buying time, not a cure. We built more in those 6 months than many fathers and sons build in a lifetime. Compressed by the knowledge of limited time, we spoke honestly, deeply. He told me stories of his childhood, of my grandparents I had never met. He shared family recipes and inside jokes. He apologized again and again, in words and in actions. The night he died, I was holding his hand. He was barely conscious, the morphine keeping the worst pain at bay. "Proud of you, son," he whispered. "Always was." Those were his last words to me. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received a call from his lawyer. Could I come to the office to discuss my father's estate? I assumed there would be bills to settle, perhaps a few personal items to claim. Instead, the lawyer handed me a document showing I was the sole beneficiary of my father's estate, valued at just over $3 million. "This cannot be right," I said, in shock. The lawyer smiled. "Your father was quite a savvy businessman and investor. He lived modestly and saved aggressively. There is also this letter he asked me to give you." With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. "Joaquin," the letter began, "if you are reading this, I am gone. I know this money cannot make up for my absence in your life. Nothing could. But I want you to know that from the day you were born, I set aside money for you. Even during my darkest drinking days, I never touched your fund. It was the one thing I did right as your father. I added to it every month, imagining it funding your college, your first home, maybe your children's education someday. I hope it gives you options and security. Most of all, I hope it shows you that you were always loved, always in my thoughts, even when I failed you in every other way. Live well, my son, James." I sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down my face. Amy was equally shocked when I told her that evening. $3 million, she repeated. "That is life-changing money." It was hard to process. The father who had been absent my entire life had been quietly providing for me all along, while the parents who raised me had explicitly cut me out. The irony was not lost on me. Within days of the inheritance news becoming public, my phone began ringing. My mother called first. "Joaquin, darling, I heard about your father. I am so sorry for your loss." I had not spoken to her in over 6 months, not since she skipped my hospital visit. Her sudden concern rang hollow. "Thank you," I said neutrally. "We have been thinking we do not see enough of each other," she continued. "Why do not you come for dinner this weekend? The whole family will be there. Richard has been asking about you." I nearly laughed out loud at the blatant lie. Richard has never once asked about me in 25 years. "What prompted this sudden interest?" I asked. She sounded flustered. "Do I need a reason to want to see my son?" The next day, Thomas called for the first time in our adult lives. Then, Alicia. Both expressing sympathy for my loss. Both suggesting we reconnect. Both mentioning how they had always looked up to their big brother. I had never heard such obvious insincerity. What sealed it was the accidental voicemail. Richard had clearly meant to call my mother, but dialed me instead. "I heard his message in real time, Sandra. I have been thinking about the Joaquin situation. With that kind of money, we should really bring him back into the fold. Family sticks together right. Maybe we can discuss that investment opportunity with him. After all, blood is thicker than water, and he has always been a bit naive about business. Call me back." He hung up, unaware he had just revealed their entire scheme. I played the message for Amy, who was outraged. "You are not seriously considering going to their dinner, are you?" she demanded. "Actually, I am," I said calmly, "but I am bringing my own audio recording app." That Saturday, I arrived at my mother and Richard's house for the first family dinner I had been invited to in years. Thomas and Alicia were already there, both suspiciously interested in my life and career. Richard actually shook my hand, a first in our relationship. We made it through appetizers with superficial conversation. My mother kept touching my arm affectionately, as if we had a close relationship. It was during the main course that Richard cleared his throat importantly. "Joaquin, I have been meaning to discuss something with you. A business opportunity that has come up. Very exclusive, very lucrative. Normally, I only bring family into these deals, but I wanted to make an exception for you." I nodded, feigning interest. "That is very thoughtful, Richard. Tell me more." He launched into a convoluted explanation of some real estate development that needed investors immediately. Only $2 million buy-in. Guaranteed 20% return within 18 months. My mother nodded encouragingly. "Richard has such a good eye for these opportunities. We were hoping you might want to join the family investment pool." "Family investment pool?" I asked innocently. I did not realize there was such a thing. "Oh yes," Thomas jumped in. "Dad has been managing all our money together, very successfully." I looked around the table at their eager faces and felt a strange calm settle over me. Without a word, I took out my phone placed it on the table, and pressed play. Richard's voicemail echoed in the dining room. Their faces froze in various expressions of shock and embarrassment as the message played to completion. When it finished, there was dead silence. "Is that why I'm suddenly invited back to family dinner?" I asked quietly. "Because I have money now. Because I might be useful to you, Joaquin." "No," my mother started, her voice trembling. Richard blustered. "You are taking that completely out of context." Thomas and Alicia suddenly found their plates fascinating. I stood up slowly. For 25 years, I have been an afterthought in this family. Excluded, forgotten, told explicitly, I was not really family. Cut from your will because I am not a Davis. I worked my way through college while you paid every expense for Thomas and Alicia. I have not received so much as a birthday call from any of you in years. But now that I have inherited money, suddenly I am worthy of your attention. Richard started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. I do not want your excuses or your investment opportunities. True family is not defined by blood or last names or wills. It is defined by love, support, and showing up. My father was absent most of my life, but in his final months, he showed me more genuine care than I have felt in this house in decades. He made mistakes, huge ones, but he owned them. He apologized. He tried to make amends. I turned to my mother, whose eyes were filled with tears. "You chose this family over me repeatedly. That was your right as a parent. But now I am choosing who I consider family, and none of you qualify." With that, I walked out, ignoring their calls and protests. I drove home to Amy feeling lighter than I had in years. The months that followed were a time of healing and rebuilding. I worked with a therapist to process both the inheritance and the final confrontation with my family. The money itself sat mostly untouched while I considered what to do with it. "I keep thinking about what would have helped me most when I was younger," I told Amy one evening. "What would have made a difference when I was struggling through college, working multiple jobs, feeling completely alone?" She squeezed my hand encouragingly. "So what did you come up with?" "I want to start a scholarship fund," I explained, "for students who lack family support, kids who are putting themselves through school who do not have parents to fall back on." Together with a financial advisor, we established the James Martinez Second Chance Scholarship, dedicated to students with determination and drive, but limited family resources. We also donated a significant amount to pancreatic cancer research in my father's name. We used some of the money for ourselves too, buying our first home, a comfortable 3-bedroom that would have room for the family we hoped to start soon. I remained at my marketing job, finding satisfaction in the career I had built from scratch. My mother called periodically in the first few months after the confrontation dinner. I let most calls go to voicemail, not ready to re-engage. Richard never attempted contact again, confirming what I had always known about his true feelings toward me. To my surprise, Alicia reached out 6 months later with a handwritten letter, not asking for money or favors, but with a genuine apology. "I never realized how differently you were treated growing up," she wrote. "I was too young and self-absorbed to see it. After your dinner speech, I started remembering incidents, noticing patterns. I am truly sorry for my part in your exclusion and for not being the sister you deserved." We met for coffee, just the two of us. It was awkward but honest. She was the only one in the family who seemed capable of self-reflection. We began a cautious rebuilding on my terms this time. Thomas remained entitled and distant, occasionally sending texts that hinted at investment opportunities or business ventures. I never responded. The greatest joy came a year after my father's passing, when Amy and I discovered we were expecting our first child. As we prepared the nursery and discussed names, I found myself reflecting on what kind of parent I wanted to be. "I will break the cycle," I promised my unborn child. "You will never doubt your place in my heart. You will never feel like an outsider in your own family." The money my father left me was significant, but his most valuable gift was showing me it is never too late to try to make things right. That even after decades of mistakes, genuine connection is still possible. That sometimes the family we create is more meaningful than the one we are born into. I still think about my mother sometimes, wondering if she ever truly understands what she sacrificed by consistently choosing her new family over her firstborn son. I have forgiven her not for her sake but for mine. Carrying anger only weighs down the person holding it. The inheritance that brought out the worst in my stepfather's family brought out the best in me. Instead of becoming bitter, I chose to become generous. Instead of seeking revenge, I sought healing. The money did not change who I was, but it revealed who everyone else was. And in that revelation, I found the freedom to define family on my own terms. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Every like helps this channel grow, and your comments remind all of us that we are not alone in our struggles. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes losing what we thought was family leads to finding our true selves.